And once you're prepared to do that, then you can make the decision afterwards. But you got to make yourself a viable option for whoever's looking for you. And he didn't have that. He was constantly doing something else.
So I think he's out. He's not seriously, neither are we.
So it seems like we're all on the same page of the two people that we would choose. Ken and Natalia.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So what other information do you think would be useful on trying to make your decisions if you had more?
I'd want to know, like, if they like worked like while going to school. I'd like to know, like, I'd like to see some like recommendations from like professors, and like if like their professors would think they were successful, or like maybe talking to like peers, like just like seeing like, I guess, how they interact in a group, like maybe give them a case study and see how they work together to be able to like solve it, and just kind of like, I don't know, see them in action and not just like in theory, like Paul was saying, like seeing them actually like complete a work assignment or something, just to see how good the quality is.
If it was an opportunity in a recruiting situation, and it could be asked of someone you're recruiting, I would be tempted to ask them to do something and get back to you within 24 hours on what the result was, but give them a defined path on how it has to be done. So they would have to do it your way, and see if they would actually do it. Because the biggest problem they had with Ken, from what I remember reading the part for him, didn't it say in there that they were worried about whether he would actually listen and do what they asked him to do, because he was more mature than they were? So they thought maybe he would think he was the boss rather than
the other way around.
The other way around, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was him, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was him. That they were afraid he'd just like having be given orders.
Yeah. And some people are like that, some aren't. Like I was used to being that way, giving the orders. I was not about to take any orders. But at the same time, I also told my guys when they were working with me, this is the way I want things done. There is no other way at the moment. But when we're done a job, if you have a better idea, by all means, let's sit down and talk about it. Because you never stop learning.
No.
The problem that I think they might have had with Ken, or what they might have been worried about, was because he was so mature and was kind of set in his ways, was would he continue to work that way, as his way was better.
Yeah. They were also worried about his family life, if he would just take off because the kids needed to get picked up.
Yeah. And that is a concern. I had that problem with a business partner. And when he started going through a situation with his now ex-wife, as soon as I heard they were having trouble, I knew I was in trouble, because I knew I would never be able to count on him again. And it's not because I just had a feeling about it. It's because I knew the guy, and I knew that he would take things badly, and that he wouldn't. His priority would be his kid, which was fine with me. But the problem was the priority was him and his child. He wouldn't make it a priority to find a way to care for the child and be a part of the child's life without leaving at a heartbeat for something that wasn't something he needed to leave for.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then,
but
of
part of
course,
that is your partner.
what's that?
Is a part of that is he was your partner, right?
Yep.
So he could get away with that, where an employee couldn't. But
Nope.
I mean, you would just eventually have to let him go. You'd be like, look, you either need to make it a priority or.
Yep. And I tried the letting go thing. It turned into a legal disaster.
Well, because he was a partner.
Yep. And he wouldn't let go. So I ended up shutting the whole thing down. And it cost me a lot of money. It was not nice. But that's what I get for being too flippin' nice.
I think you just did the Mormon version of cussing.
Fudge knuckles and barbecue sticks.
There you go. For me, I have the opposite. If someone says, "Oh, because you're a single mom, I don't see you doing this," I work harder to prove them wrong. So I have that opposite thinking, like just because the family's there doesn't mean anything, that he could probably work harder and prove you guys wrong. But that's me.
But at the same time, when you're just breaking, like when you're just going through a divorce, like you're not gonna be yourself. Like you're not gonna be like you're gonna have good days and you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days where you don't want to get out of bed, and like there's gonna be other days where you're gonna like want to like prove the world wrong, and that you're gonna be like way more successful than anyone else. Like I don't think there's any clear divine path between like people grieve in different ways. So I don't know. I think it would be hard for a lot of people.
I would want to know the whys behind all this. For me, these kind of situations are really hard for me to evaluate, simply because I don't know I didn't see the interview. I don't know the job that they're actually filling. I mean, you get the gist of it, but you don't know the culture of of the company and all that. Like I would want to know, like, since we're talking about Ken, why do they feel like he would disregard what they said? Because I know older people that are fully engaged and ready to learn new things. What about the interview made them think that? That's what I would want to know. Or it's hard to say, is language going to be a problem if you don't know how much they're actually going to interact with customers versus managers. If it's just managers, I think it's fine. If it's maybe the general public, it may not work as well. I don't know.
And that's the whole point of having references. And a lot of people don't realize how good their references can be if they choose the right reference to give. And in Ken's situation, so what if he's gone on the weekend? I've had guys like that too, but I got 110% out of them on the 5 days I had them. And on the weekends, I used the other guys to pick up the slack during the Saturdays when we had to work. So in Ken's situation, once you start talking and getting a hold of references, you might find that he puts out in a 4-day week more than most of these guys put out in a 6-day week.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he doesn't have that option on the weekend. He has to be with his family. It's just like the guy that owns the company that builds all the Costcos. He's a member of the church, and when he got that contract, he told them, if I build a building that's better than any of yours, any of your other contractors, I get all of them. So when they awarded the contract to him, he told them right off the bat, he said, no matter what happens, we will not work on a Sunday. And he's kept that, and he's done that the entire time, and he's always done the buildings the way they're supposed to be done and within time and budget. But at the same time, he's made that commitment to his family and his church that he will not work on that day. I've got an accounting office that's right beside me, right outside my door. They're there at certain times of year, 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
And
No
I
tax
understand
time.
why. But I also know other accounting firms that won't work on a Sunday, and they have a higher customer load than this guy does. It's just a matter of priorities and whether you can work with it and around it. So just like these two, even with Natalia, she's young. She's still growing up.
Yeah.
Like, she's got a lot to learn, but at the same time, she knows more languages than the other guys. She could be an asset in a market that maybe these guys haven't tapped yet.
True, because wasn't it in the very beginning of the reading that they were still trying to kind of expand a little bit?
Something like that. I went past most of the beginning and went to the stuff that I thought was important.
You're so funny. I think there's good and bad to both sides. I mean, Natalia is young, but they're usually the ones that are driven. They're usually the ones that are willing to try anything, learn anything. And they also bring in new, fresh ideas. Because when you're older, you kind of, you know what works for you or what has worked in the past, and you kind of stick with those. On the other hand, if you're older, you have more experience. You do know what will work and what will not work, but then you tend to be less tolerant or less willing to try new things and to change and to expand. So there's good in both. You know, it just depends on what the company is looking for.
Yeah.
And if they're planning like we read in the other article, the other one that was in our reading, part of your planning is you want to plan 2-3 years down the road. So you start recruiting early to prepare those. So that person may be 22 years old and young right now, but you give them a good mentor, and bang, in 3 years, you've got somebody that's now going to be someone else's mentor.
That's true. All right. What's our next question?
Okay. So we're going to move on to the interview process. Why is there so much disagreement between the senior bankers in the Saturday meeting about which recruiters to hire?
Well, this is what I'm learning at work this week. Apparently, it's all about your objective. If you don't sit down and go over what you actually want and need, then you're just kind of winging it, and it's going to be all over the place. Everybody has their own opinions and their own ideas. So they're not necessarily solving for the same solution.
Okay. So is it partly because of the interview process?
Oh, I'm sure. I don't remember.
Well, the hiring process was supposed to have been their top priority when they went, right?
Yeah.
So even though the hiring process was the top priority, I wonder if maybe they were just focusing too much on what they thought was negative from each candidate instead of looking at the hiring process as to how those candidates are going to benefit the company and choose accordingly.
Well, I think each one of them are going to have different priorities when they're looking at a candidate. You know, like my coworker and I, when we talk to somebody, she's looking at it from one point of view, and the needs and the wants that I want are completely different, or just even the way we think about things. So if they didn't sit down and say, what do we need out of this person and where are we taking them? You know, they're all coming in from their own direction. They do group interviews, right?
Whoa, we're getting some feedback. Or is that just me?
No, I hear it.
turn mine down. Here we go.
I don't think it was yours.
That's okay. So what was the question again? I lost track.
Why is there so much disagreement between the senior bankers?
Oh, let's see.
I think one thing that they didn't take into consideration is the senior bankers, they all had different groups that they ran. So they were trying to find someone who would fit into their special group instead of looking at like the whole of everything.
That's what I don't understand is why would they, like, if they were so specialized, why would they hire someone to be randomly placed within the groups? Like, I feel like the direct supervisor, like it talked about in the readings, should be doing the hiring. Like, I don't understand why, like, it's like, oh, I think you'd be a good fit in this spot, but not this spot because of these reasons. Or like, I just feel like people are generally motivated for their own self-interest. So like, if they see a candidate that they think would do well in their group, they're going to want to hire them because they can like see the attributes that are required for that position. But like when they're asked to like do the hiring for like different departments that are other specialties that might need different skills, like I don't really understand like why they would be doing that.
No, that's true. And I guess one of the questions at the end was, you guys really want this one, but if I can't place it somewhere else, do you want it in your group? And that kind of started changing the way the bankers started thinking about it.
Yeah. So I feel like if like they're doing the hiring for like their own like group, I think that would be better than like hiring just like generically and then putting them with someone. And I think that like the recruits would also like that because there wouldn't be as much ambiguity in like what they would be doing for work.
Yeah, how do you prepare for that interview?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they would like, it'd just be more informative. Like, hey, like we think you're a good fit. Like, this is the role that you'd have with SG Cohen, and like, I don't know. I feel like that would be a good idea.
Okay, here's another one. Might there be a better way to learn about the candidates and then instead of the traditional interviews?
Well, I know ours, we actually do research on, well, depending on the level, but we'll actually do research like on their Facebook. We'll Google them, see if we can find out anything about them. See if we can find them on Facebook.
I think Paul going over like the task, like giving them a defined task and having them work through it and getting back to you is a good idea. I think you could do that like in person too, like give them a case study or like just like a sample like assignment for them to do, and then just like something that they would do in their job, and then just see how accurate it is and compare it among like the different clients, like see how fast they were able to complete it, how accurate they were, how it's formatted, and kind of make your decision based on like almost like a case test or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, because then you're testing their skill, not just trusting what they say.
Yeah, because I mean, like if they're conversational enough and like able to get along with like the recruiters at the on-campus interviews, it just seems like it means that they're socially there. Like they're not socially awkward. Like obviously they can converse well with the recruiter. So once they make it to that Super Saturday, it seems like they should do like a couple interviews and then just like, okay, like your soft skills are good. How about like your technical skills? Like how are they? Because like that would make it a more of a level playing field between like the people with the really high GPA like Natalia and Martin, where like they weren't allowed to ask his GPA, or like the other guy that had a really low GPA, but he was running a business on the side. So I feel like if they like, I don't know, tested them all, it would make it more fair or even.
Yeah.
Be able to analyze them better.
What are the criteria for choosing candidates at SG Cohen?
Sorry,
Before
what
I
was
move-
that?
What are the criteria for choosing candidates?
Oh,
Hey, before I move on to that, I do
Yes.
think the Super Saturday as a whole was a bad idea because she kept the interviews moving. They didn't have time to process them, and so they would have all just kind of run together by the end of the day. How do you keep straight of who is who if you don't have time to process and maybe write your notes and all that other stuff? So I just think the Super Saturday idea was bad.
Well, I think, and I'm trying to find the paper. At the end of everything, because I print everything out, they had the sample pages from their eval books where they marked little notes on it. So when it came time to sitting down with everybody, they could pull out their papers and just go over the, everybody kind of go over the notes.
Oh yeah, no, and I know that. I just maybe I'm a slow processor. I would prefer to have just time to sit there and go over everything.
Well, yeah, because was it what? I think they only had so many minutes in between each person coming in, and they wanted to move it quickly. I would want at least 5 minutes in between each interview to process what I just heard from everybody.
But do you really think you're actually listening to the candidates at the end of the day? By then your brain is fried and you no longer care. You're like, just pick somebody.
True. I would want to be going home by
I
then.
had the hard time making the decision as well. Have any of you ever been to a Super Saturday?
No.
Oh, thankfully, no.
Yeah, they're luckily I haven't been involved. Family members have, and friends of mine. But a Super Saturday, from what I read in here, is these guys went alone. They didn't bring anyone with them, and you cannot do a Super Saturday without an admin with you, because you cannot control your thoughts and keep them on track by the end of the time you've done 4 interviews, because you basically have, depending on what school you're in, you're mandated to about 8 minutes a client and a 4 to 5 minute break. So you have to be done in less than 15 minutes per person. If you don't have an admin with you writing down what's going on, then you're not going to remember that after. I mean, luckily they only had 4 here, but what about these guys who do 20 or 30 in a day?
Yeah.
So you got to have somebody recording that information that's completely biased to the situation. They're just recording information so that they can review that with you, because you don't have time to read it. That person that's with you would blurt that out. But I didn't notice in here anywhere that they did that, it was just the 4 of them that went or something.
Yeah.
On their own. And
No,
that's kind of hard to do. I can't do it without someone there. But that's me. Sorry, got you off track a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the other question we were supposed to be answering before I sidetracked us?
what is the criteria for choosing candidates?
Oh, they had a whole thing on that in their reading.
they have to be from a top 25 school, right?
Yeah, I read that. I'm trying to find where I read it. I thought it was under the hiring process, but it's not.
It's under Ray's hiring process.
Oh, under Ray's strategy
Yeah.
on page 4.
Yeah, it's the top 25 schools.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Can you read the question one more time? I'm sorry.
What are the criteria for choosing candidates at SG Gowan?
Oh. Sorry, I went to the other reading in my head. I'm like, oh, they had some totally, they had criteria to,
Yeah.
to figure that out. And I'm like, but it's not specific to this. Sorry. They had to do team, so she did. So it looks like she looked at a lot of things. Team captains.
The school presentations.
Hmm.
Yeah, you had to have some alumni that were helping. Yeah, that's a hard one to answer. I don't know how I'd answer that.
Well, I know that they had those informal interviews. That was everybody's own time to come in and do an informal interview. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. How do senior bankers know what they are supposed to be looking for in the candidates? How could this process be improved?
Well, they had that list. I mean, so that kind of told them what they were looking for. Which I do think the list is smart, because then you are asking the same questions and you're comparing apples to apples. So I don't know.
Read that question again.
Which one?
The one you just asked.
How do senior bankers know what they are supposed to be looking for in a candidate? How could this process be improved?
I'm looking at this list, and it doesn't have any objectives on it. It just has, creativity, modeling. Well, what about creativity? Do they need it in their job? Do they, initiative? I think the questions or the points on this list could have been more pointed.
If you use the other reading that we did, and you use the 7 points, that's something that the senior people would be able to use in their processes, like anticipating the needs and specifying the job, stuff like that.
Yeah. The kick of this, the criteria isn't very clear with them on.
Yeah.
It's not very clear.
I might be missing something, but I don't.
See, man.
They've got their hiring criteria, but that's kind of vague too.
Yeah.
Huh.
So how would you improve the fact that their criteria isn't very defined of what they're really looking for? How would you improve it?
I would define it. I would make them specify what exactly are they looking for. And then instead of just putting notes of, initiative or motivation or creativity, I would make them be more specific in their worksheet. Like, how do they prioritize? Or, you know what I mean? Like, if customer service is the most important, do they prioritize clients over tasks or tasks over clients? Would be an example.
Yeah, they need to put in there whether they're looking for somebody for short term, long term, or entry level, or if they're looking for someone with a little more experience to fill a spot.
So you're saying they have to put in the end result of the equation, so they know what they're solving for.
Yeah, they don't need to release what their end goal is, but they need to have an end goal to base it on.
Hey, Darren, didn't you just go through this process?
Of getting hired?
Yeah. Didn't you just say you got an offer letter?
Yep. I just got hired by an accounting firm. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, like, accounting's a little different from like consulting, because like I just had to be normal, and like I stood out from most of the kids in my class.
You're saying most of the kids in your class aren't normal?
Yeah, like they're kind of awkward. I mean, I don't know. Like I was just very personable, and then like I have good grades, so I got an offer. Like it wasn't like it like all the interviews were behavioral. Like there is no quantitative aspect to it. So it was pretty straightforward. Like I just went in for like a day to Tulsa, and I just talked to the partner and a couple managers and an associate, and they were just really like nice. Like they were just like they just really liked me already, and like they like it was kind of informal. Like they offered me a position like that day. Like the partner offered me a job like during the interview, so it was just very like I guess forward. Like it wasn't like as formal as like my I did an internship with Deloitte, which is another big accounting firm, and they were a lot more like strict, I guess, and like a little more professional, whereas like the company that I'm with now, it seemed like more like friendly and like I don't know.
One's laid back, one's corporate.
Yeah, like it's still like early prestigious firm, like it's Ernst and Young. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's it was just like I guess it was just the office, and like each office like in firms, especially accounting firms, like they all have different partners, so they all have like slightly different culture based on like where you are and like who your boss is kind of thing. So like as long as you know how to do accounting work, like it's pretty like it's not like there's not as much.
You either know how to do it or you don't.
Yeah, exactly. You either get the right answer or you don't. And so as long as you're not stupid, they're just more worried about like if you're able to get along with other people.
And Paul, I know you laughed at, like the whole normal comment, but I could totally see that in accounting, just because they tend to be a little more OCD. They tend to be a little bit more,
Yeah.
They're kind of odd ducks.
Yeah. And like as long as you're personable and like you're going to be in an audit room with them for like 12 hours in a day, so you just want to make sure that like you can have fun too, like while you're hating your life, I guess.
So does that mean you're going to be an auditor?
Yeah, so the companies I'm working on are ConocoPhillips and Phillips 66.
Oh.
So they're just big oil and gas companies. And that's the only client that I have because they're huge. It's like it's like number 6 on the Fortune 500 list. So like basically just them.
Yeah, that's gonna be a headache. Lots of work though.
Yeah. Yeah. But the good thing is like 3 months of my life will suck, and then the rest of the time I can just golf and like work like 35 hours a week. So I'm okay with that. They pay for my golf membership, so I was pretty excited about that.
That's fantastic. I just think because we have auditors coming, actually, they just came into our office. You know, they come every year, and apparently we're one of the nice ones because usually people don't like auditors, so they just kind of avoid them at all costs.
Yeah, because we make
And
you
it's really
get
hard.
stuff and do
Yep.
things.
Yes,
Yeah.
accounting does not like the auditors. They don't really bother me, so I don't mind them.
Yeah. That's funny.
You have to pull it all and then put it all back, and yeah, so much fun.
So much fun.
Okay, we're gonna move on. The School of Recruiting. So decide which business schools to recruit at was controversial. Why was the choice of which schools to recruit at so important?
I guess because they wanted like students that were like came from a respectable school and like worked hard, but they also wanted to get like the pick of the litter kind of thing. Whereas like if they went to like the top 10 school, they might get picked off. Like the top candidates from those schools might get picked off early by like more lucrative positions in different companies. And so they just really wanted to like get the best recruits, but maybe not from like the top schools so that the people would be more loyal and want to work for them.
Do you agree with the core school strategy?
I think you have top schools for a reason. I mean, they're considered the top for a reason. Do you think? I think you can get a good education elsewhere, you know, but I do think it's the top school for a reason. So if that's what they're looking for, then yes, I do. I agree with it.
I tend to disagree because like one of my best friends growing up, he did his undergraduate at the University of Calgary, and then he went on to get a master's in finance from Harvard. And he said the Harvard degree was a joke. Like he literally just paid like $80,000 for 2 semesters, and he said he didn't really learn anything, but then like the recruiting opportunities after were way higher. So I,
Wow.
I think I think it's more like the network and the associations you get from like those top business schools that really make the difference.
You're
Like, and
paying
I've
for a
heard it from
brand.
like, sorry, what was that?
I'm sorry. I said you're paying for a brand, not necessarily the.
Yeah, not necessarily the quality. Cause like even like some of the programs at BYU Idaho, like compared to BYU Provo, I've heard are harder. Like the accounting program at BYU Idaho is harder. And people from BYU Idaho generally pass the CPA exam earlier and with less tries than people from BYU Provo. But like BYU Provo is ranked like I think fourth in the nation.
Hmm.
And so like it's so it's a lot of perspective, I guess.
I
And
stand
just like
corrected.
hearsay, yeah.
Would it make sense for the company to recruit from other graduate programs like law or technology?
I think it depends on what they want.
Yeah.
But like I have heard that like engineers that get MBAs are really valuable because they come with a different perspective. And so I think like they might think differently because like if you're all business like MBA graduates, you've all done the same case studies, you're all going to I guess tend to look at problems from the same angle. And whereas like if you come from a different background, you might like see a perspective or a side of the issue that no one else has, and it might be like cheaper, more easily like implemented. I don't know.
That's actually a very good point. But I agree. It would depend on what they're looking for. I do know like people hire things like what do they say? Most managers are English majors because they're good communicators. So even though they have a different degree, you want what they what it gives them.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pros and cons of Cowan's approach to recruiting on campus?
Of what on campus?
Recruiting.
To his approach to recruiting.
Yeah, approach to recruiting.
I got this question wrong on the quiz. I thought they were just on campus. They were just trying to get like the best candidates so they didn't look like idiots to their bosses who were interviewing them. But I got that question wrong on the quiz, so I actually don't know. I have no idea. I tried reading the case again to see why I got it wrong. I still don't understand it.
I'm not really sure
Well,
to
I'm
say.
not the only one who's going to get it wrong.
Yeah, seriously. But I have no idea. I tried to think of it, but like I guess like his approach was just to get the best candidates and move them on to the interview with like the people they'd be working with.
Get more bang for your buck kind of thing, since they're all
Yeah.
there. Time efficiency, maybe.
I don't know. I think it got too many people in the process of hiring.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few. And it kind of is weird that they're sending different recruiters to different schools because there's not a straight across comparison from the very beginning of like who they think would be a good fit and who they wouldn't, because like I don't know, there might be 5 good candidates from one school but only 2 from another, but yet like they're all just offering like 3 positions for Super Saturday or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be better if there's like there's a team of recruiters that went to all the different schools rather than just one that went to like one specific school.
Well, that jumps into the next one. Are the associates the best people to send to campuses for recruiting?
I'm going to say no. And the reason why is because I think somebody who's not an associate can still narrow down a good candidate. And I think an associate's going to look at it at their very narrow point of view of what they're trying to solve for. Whereas a candidate is going to, a recruiter is going to look at the overall package, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I think you take the overall package and then take it to an associate who's going to ask the very pointed questions.
What about sending more senior bankers?
No.
No?
No, because they don't have time.
Yeah, and they also talked about how like this more senior bankers might overlook like the administrative and just like menial tasks that associates have to do. Whereas people that are lower down on the totem pole would see like the day-to-day things that they would need to do and see if they were a good fit. And senior bankers are expensive. Like you're paying for their time. And
Yeah, I'm into
So-
that.
Would it be a good idea to save money and get a uniform and get more uniform by sending recruiters from the HR department?
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yes.
I think to do the initial screening, but like they said in that reading, like the hiring decision should be made by the direct boss or the direct supervisor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What
So
do
I
you
think
guys?
they should.
Go ahead.
Just with EY, they have recruiters that like come and look at you initially, and then they like make you like record yourself on video answering like different questions, and then your direct supervisors watch your videos of like how you answered the questions, and then they decide whether or not to bring you in for like an office interview before they spend the money to like send out for you. So I think like even they like kind of followed the same pattern. Like they did like an HR interview, and then they did like where my direct, like the people that I'd be working with most closely interviewed me as well, kind of afterwards.
Yeah, they narrow down the pool, and then they bring in like what 3 or 4 candidates for the actual team that you're going to be working with to say, hey, he'll work with us. He's not dumber than a rock, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this self-selection process?
I don't remember that process.
I think it was with the schools where people could sign themselves up instead of having like a team captain or someone from the school say that they would be good.
I would go for it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Darren, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking like if a recruiter just like, here, sign up if you're like, if you want to come or if you want to like interview with us. Like I almost feel like they weren't putting in the effort to recruit us, like they didn't really care. Whereas like if they came in person and like presented and like shared about their company, I'd feel like they were more invested in like trying to find good quality candidates. So I think I'd prefer to go to the company that did the on-campus interviews rather than the other way around.
Okay. Part 4 is the Super Saturday. What are the objects of Super Saturday? Objectives, sorry.
To narrow down your candidate pool and to get a short view of what each of those people is like.
Yep.
I think it's to do a where you can compare them side by side closely together so that you don't forget one and the other. Unfortunately, I think the end result is that they all run together. But I think the objective of it is to be able to compare people against each other, one right after the other, so each impression is fresh in your mind.
Do you think any of the objectives conflict with each other?
You mean on Super Saturday?
On Super Saturday, yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think they conflict. I just don't think they're effective. Or maybe they are, and I just haven't experienced them.
What kind of information do you think you get from the candidates during the Super Saturday?
The first thing you get when you're in those situations, because when you got 300 or 400 people in one big room that are being interviewed by different companies, you get to find how that person's stress level goes when they're in the midst of a situation that they have to explain their way out of. And when they're being prepped for an interview like that, you have to see if basically you're searching to find who has the best composure and who can present themselves the best for the situation they're being asked about.
Do you think there was
switch really fast under fire?
Do you think there would be better ways to structure the on-campus interviewing and recruiting?
Well, there's always a better way to do things. But sometimes we do things just because it's more convenient. So I don't know that it would. I don't know. If your question is how to make it better, I'm not sure. But yes, there's probably a better way of doing it. Because you can always improve.
What are the pros and cons for a super Saturday?
The pro is
you're too tired when you're trying to do everything all at once.
and that they all start to run together eventually. But the pro is that you get to compare them one right off the other. You know, like each person is fresh in your memory in theory. And it's time efficient. I mean, instead of spending an hour with each one, you're spending, 15 minutes. So, it's more time efficient.
Anything else? Okay.
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, we're gonna do the final part. Yay! What is the difference between recruiting and hiring?
Recruiting is bringing people in, or you're going out and seeking talent, and hiring is never mind.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, and I think hiring is like integrating the person that you've recruited into your organization.
I agree. Because when you're recruiting, all you're doing is you're trying to search out different individuals and different personalities and work ethics. And then when you're hiring, you have to take all that information and find the best person that holds the largest amount of those attributes that you're trying to get. And then putting it into effect.
See, that's why I hang out with you guys. You say things much better.
What did you learn from this case about recruiting?
It's a headache.
Isn't it always?
It's a smarter way to do things. Recruiting is just, it's a better way to search and try and find what you're after without having to commit to it right away.
What did you learn about? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that it's important to be effective. To go in there with purpose, or go in there to have a strategy.
What did you learn about hiring?
It's not like a straightforward process. It's not like you just pick the best candidate. Like, everyone has strengths and weaknesses, so it's hard like to narrow it down to one person that you want to hire, because there's the fear of missing out.
The grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I did wonder if they meant, when they talk about recruiting and hiring, if they meant the context of recruiting, you're seeking out specific talent, and hiring, you're just filling a seat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another way to look at it. But.
Fair.
Ask each team member to rate the overall quality of today's discussion from 0 to 10.
I'd say like 9. We spent like 2 hours or an hour and a half on this.
I know.
I would have to say between an 8 and a 9, just due to the fact that I wasn't prepared like I should have been.
It's okay,
I'll
we'll
go with-
forgive you.
I'll go with Paul's as well, just because I feel like I was a little more scatterbrained tonight than usual. But I thought overall the discussion was good.
What did I do as a leader that you guys liked?
Asked us questions.
Kept the questions pointed in the right
Yeah,
direction.
you kept trying to bring us back to what we were supposed to be doing.
What can I do better next time?
I would like to see your face. How's that?
I'm sorry. There we
I'm
go.
just teasing.
Is
I'm
that
just
better?
teasing.
My screen's always tilted.
No, you're fine. I'm just teasing. I had to come up with something. That's all I got.
There you go. No, I think it was pretty good.
I think so. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that was a long one.
I agree.
Yeah, there seemed to be a lot more. Even when I read through the questions and stuff before I read this stuff, I'm like, this is going to be a long discussion.
Yeah.
But we'll get better at it.
Yep.
We
That's
will.
all good.
So do we know who's going to be leader next week? Or are we going to just start all the way over from the beginning?
I'm good either way.
I can do it. I don't mind.
You want to do it again, Darren? Okay.
Sure. I would love that.
Okay, we'll start from scratch and go back around the corner again.
Okay.
Oh man.
Sounds good. I'll send you the link to the video once it finishes processing.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. I'm going to say goodbye because I need to go have dinner.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yes,
gotta go.
that's a good idea. We'll see you guys later.
Bye,
See you
guys.
later.